Alien General came to me, and she said that her father told me your life journey. The stars above Weller Station flickered like dying fireflies, which felt like a fitting metaphor for Jonas Creed's life. He sat on a cracked bench outside Docking Bay 6 sipping lukewarm synth coffee from a cracked cup, his boots resting on his battered toolkit. The faint smell of burnt ozone and fried circuitry filled the stale air somewhere. A robotic janitor chased a gang of feral cleaning drones, its mechanical voice issuing tired threats. Jonas watched the chaos unfold, yawned, and sipped his coffee. Another day in paradise. He didn't notice the ship at first, not until the ambient hum of the station shifted into an unnatural silence. Every maintenance light blinked once, twice, then flared into a vivid blue. Jonas frowned and peered up, shielding his eyes from the unexpected brightness. A vessel like no other he'd seen materialized into existence above Bay 6, its surface rippling like liquid chrome, shedding colors in impossible combinations. It hovered for a breathless moment before gliding down with eerie grace, settling into the dock with a whisper rather than a thud. A few nearby workers dropped their tools, muttered quick prayers to whatever space gods they believed in, and scattered. Jonas, in a decision he would soon regret, stayed put. Curiosity, his oldest and most dangerous flaw, rooted him to the spot. The ship's hatch peeled open with a hiss, releasing a puff of crystalline mist that glittered in the artificial light. From the mist emerged a figure, tall, regal, and utterly alien despite her human-like frame. She moved with an elegance that made Jonas acutely aware of his stained coveralls and week-old stubble. Her hair, dark as the space between galaxies, tumbled over a uniform lined with metallic threads that pulsed faintly with each heartbeat, and her ears long, gracefully pointed, sweeping back like the wings of some exotic bird, marked her unmistakably as not of Earth. She walked straight toward Jonas, her boots making no sound on the worn metal floor, and stopped barely a foot away. Jonas tried to stand, but found that his body had suddenly forgotten how knees worked. My father always spoke of you, she said, voice smooth as synth silk, but with a weight that pressed against Jonas's chest. Jonas stared at her coffee cup, frozen halfway to his lips. A single brilliant thought occurred to him: this is how I die. An alien queen is going to laser my face off because I installed the wrong fuses in her dad's spaceship. He opened his mouth to respond. Nothing came out except a weak wheeze that might have been the beginning of a hello, or possibly the sound of his soul evacuating. The woman arched one elegant eyebrow, her lips twitching upward ever so slightly. You do not remember, do you? Jonas shook his head mutely. She sighed, a sound both exasperated and amused, and then with astonishing gentleness, reached out to pluck the coffee cup from his fingers before it spilled all over his lap. Perhaps introductions are in order. I am General Sars Velquin, commander of the Zythar 3rd Fleet. Jonas' brain finally kicking into first gear, managed to croak. Jonas Creed, maintenance guy, occasionally hero if the vending machines are acting up to his surprise. Sars chuckled, a low melodic sound that made something warm stir in Jonas's gut before he could bask in the small victory. However, Sars tapped a small device at her belt, and a beam of pale light enveloped them both. Jonas yelped and tried to jump away, but the beam held him in place. Hey, personal space, what is this, an abduction? I didn't even finish my coffee. We are merely relocating, Sarah said, utterly unbothered. Besides, you will find the accommodation superior to Docking Bay 6 and significantly less likely to contract fungal lung. The light intensified, and with a disorienting lurch the universe flipped inside out. Jonas's stomach did a triple somersault and filed for retirement. When the world righted itself, Jonas found himself inside the alien ship, standing on a floor that shimmered like a river caught in starlight. The walls pulsed with a soft organic glow, and somewhere distant a heartbeat-like rhythm thrummed through the air. He immediately bent double, hands on knees, and groaned, I'm going to redecorate your fancy spaceship with synth coffee if you don't give me a warning next time. Sarah handed him a small iridescent cube. Place this under your tongue, it will stabilize your inner equilibrium. Jonas eyed the cube suspiciously. Is this how you aliens get People addicted to interstellar cough drops, her lips twitched again dangerously close to a full smile trust. Me Jonas Creed, if we wanted you incapacitated you would be well that's. Comforting grumbling Jonas popped the cube, under his tongue it dissolved instantly leaving a taste somewhere. Between mint metal and regret miraculously the nausea faded straightening up he glanced around the ship's strange symbols scrolled lazily across translucent panels, and slender tendrils of light flickered between. Stations nice digs, he said, bit minimalist needs a few fake plants maybe. A lava lamp. Sowers led him through the ship's winding corridors her stride. Purposeful Jonas hustled to keep up feeling like a scruffy barnacle stuck to the hull of a luxury cruiser as they walked she spoke my father Admiral Quinn Velquin served alongside your people. During the border conflicts Jonas blinked border conflicts I thought that was just a conspiracy theory like the secret moon casinos, or the haunted asteroids they were quite real as were the debts incurred. She paused at a wide archway leading into what looked suspiciously like a war room, or perhaps a very aggressive library. He spoke often of a human who saved his life, a technician who repaired a sabotage grab stabilizer during a skirmish at Vega outpost. That human was you. Jonas scrubbed a hand over his face. Vague memories stirred panic fire, the smell of molten metal, a night spent elbow deep in alien tech he barely understood while alarms howled and soldiers screamed. He'd survived mostly by blind luck and a deep-seated refusal to admit he had no idea what he was doing. So you're saying I'm a war hero? He tried to process this and failed spectacularly. I always knew my complete lack of a plan would pay off someday. Sowers allowed herself a genuine laugh, this time a sound that seemed to make the whole ship lean in to listen. But why now? Jonas asked. Why come looking for me after all this time? Her expression sobered. Because debts must be honored, and because enemies of both our worlds stir once more. Jonas groaned. Of course it's never because someone wants to throw me a party, in a manner of speaking, Sarah said, stepping aside to reveal a holographic map blazing to life. You are invited to war. Jonas stared at the flashing points of conflict blooming across the stars like deadly flowers. His heart thudded painfully. He was a maintenance man, a coffee addict, a guy who once rewired a snack dispenser to vend free sandwiches, and somehow he had just been drafted by a stunning long-eared alien general into saving the galaxy. He sighed and adjusted his tool belt. Fine, but I'm not wearing any stupid uniforms and I want hazard pay like double. Sarah tilted her head considering triple. Jonas blinked. You drive a hard bargain, she smiled. You have no idea. And somewhere deep in the living metal bones of the ship the universe shifted, preparing for the chaos that Jonas Creed was about to unleash upon it. Jonas woke up to the unsettling realization that the bed beneath him was breathing, not in a metaphorical, oh it's so comfortable it's alive kind of way. No, it was literally breathing. The mattress pulsed gently, inhaling and exhaling in rhythmic waves like it had its own lungs. He jolted upright, eyes wide, and immediately regretted it as a soft chime sounded from somewhere overhead. Good morning, Jonas Creed, came a polite disembodied voice. This habitat has been biocalibrated to optimize your comfort. Please refrain from panicking. Bit late for that, thanks, Jonas muttered, sliding off the edge and letting his feet sink into a floor that molded itself around his toes like warm dough. Note to self: never trust furniture that has a pulse. The room was softly lit, its walls lined with what appeared to be glowing vines that shifted color as he moved. No sharp corners, no hard surfaces, everything was smooth, fluid, organic. A single doorway irised open at his approach, and a pleasant scent wafted in like someone had cooked breakfast using starlight and cinnamon. He stepped into a hallway and nearly walked face first into General Sars Velquin. She was wearing something that looked suspiciously casual, dark blue high-colored fabric that shimmered with a pattern resembling a galaxy in motion. Her long ears twitched once as though sensing his awkward approach before he even opened his mouth. Sleep well? She asked, walking beside him as if he hadn't just burst out of a sentient bed. Well, once I got over the creeping fear that it might eat me in my Sleep, Jonah said. Do all your beds breathe, or was that just a special treat for the Earthling? Sowers gave a small shrug. Our ships are partially alive. They adapt to their occupants. You should be honored it bonded with you quickly. Great, he grumbled. I've been here a day and I'm already in a committed relationship with a mattress. They moved through the corridor, its walls gradually shifting from serene pastel hues to the deep steel blue of command sectors. They pass crew members' cellar officers with striking facial markings and eyes that shimmered like distant quasars, who gave respectful nods to Siri and suspicious glances to Jonah's friendly bunch. He noted they've never seen a human in person, she said, at least not one that wasn't shooting at them or yelling in a confused accent. Jonas grinned. That tracks. So where are we headed? The briefing chamber. There's someone you should meet. They entered a wide room shaped like a helix, its central table pulsing with slow waves of light. The walls shimmered with data streams, alien scripts scrolling across in elegant arcs. A humanoid figure stood at the far end, tall, androgynous skin, a deep shade of silver blue. Their robes glittered faintly with embedded circuitry. This is Melanto, Sarah said. Our shipmind liaison. The figure bowed slightly. Jonah's creed, an organic anomaly. Welcome aboard the Valara. Thanks, Jonah said, scratching the back of his neck. Are you part of the ship, or I am the ship? Melon replied, a consciousness bound to both synthetic and organic architecture. I am aware of every footstep you take, every breath you draw, and every time you nearly tripped over your own shoelaces last night. Jonas blinked. Okay, that's not creepy at all. I'm also aware of the 6 times you attempted to access the nutritional module and failed. It kept asking me riddles. I just wanted a snack, not a philosophical debate. Melon gave a slow blink. The nutritional module is programmed to test patience. It has found yours insufficient. Sarah stepped between them, her tone amused. Melon, show him the projections. The table flared to life, displaying a map of the local systems. Stars twinkled, orbit paths shimmered, and several red zones pulsed ominously near the edge of Zythar-controlled space. These are Syndic movements, Sarah said. They've re-emerged in the Lyran belt. Hit and run attacks, data theft, sabotage. So far small, but coordinated. Jonah squinted at one of the flickering red points. Looks like a game of galactic whack-a-ole. They are testing our response times, Melon said, and they are getting faster, more precise, which means they found something or someone who's feeding them high data. Jonas leaned in. And what do I have to do with all this, sir? Reached into a compartment and pulled out a small battered object, a rusted old wristwatch. Jonas blinked. Wait, that's my watch. I lost it decades ago. You didn't lose it, she said. You gave it to my father. He used it to encrypt a data key, one we now believe is being hunted by the Syndic. Why my watch? Because it's analog, obsolete, uncrackable by standard tech. You inadvertently made it the most secure data container in our alliance. Jonas gaped. So I'm a maintenance guy, a war hero, and now an accidental cryptographic genius. Don't let it go to your head. Mel said. You still can't operate a snack dispenser. Sarah stepped forward. We need to retrieve the data embedded in the watch. My father left a memory cipher. Only you can activate your biometrics were keyed into it. Jonah stared at the watch, then back at her. And if I refuse, then we will be forced to throw you out an airlock, Melon offered pleasantly. Sarah frowned. No, we will not. Jonas, I understand this is overwhelming, but your involvement wasn't an accident. My father saw something in you. Jonas picked up the watch, its scratched face catching the ambient light. He remembered the night he gave it to Admiral Velquin after a mission gone wrong, both of them bruised and bleeding, laughing over ration packs and comparing battle scars. It had seemed like a joke then, now it felt like the beginning of something huge. Fine, he said, but I want a better room with a bed that doesn't breathe. No promises, Sarah said, smiling. Oh, and if I'm risking my life, he added, I want full control over the snack dispensers. Absolutely not, Melon said flatly. Sowers just laughed. Jonas looked down at the old watch in his hand and felt the universe subtly change its tune again, like it was waiting for him to step into the next verse of a song he didn't know the words Tibut was already humming along with Jonas found himself in what he could only describe as a laboratory designed by someone who had never heard of the concept of safety regulations. Strange orbs floated through the air humming tunelessly while cables thick as tree trunks pulsed underfoot occasionally. Writhing like lazy snakes, the ceiling was a vast dome of transparent material, showing the endless sprawl of stars above. It was beautiful, it was terrifying. It smelled faintly of burnt marshmallows. Sarah, calm as ever, stood at a console that looked suspiciously alive, her hands moving through glowing strands of data like a conductor guiding an invisible symphony. Mel hovered nearby, projecting diagrams into the air that Jonas couldn't make heads or tails of. Okay, Jonas said, clutching the old wristwatch so tightly he was sure he'd leave fingerprints in the metal. Walk me through this again slowly, like I'm a child or a particularly unintelligent golden retriever. Sarah turned, her long ears flicking in amusement. You place the watch on the platform. Melon initiates the decryption sequence. Your biometric signature unlocks the data. Simple. Jonas repeated, glancing at the platform in question. It was a small pedestal in the center of the room, currently glowing with a soft, inviting blue light. It looked deceptively harmless, like a very fancy cake stand, and there's absolutely no chance of it exploding in my face. Melon tilted their head. Minimal. That's not a no. We have optimized containment protocols, Melon added helpfully. Should the data packet prove volatile, you will be atomized quickly and painlessly. Jonas gave them a thumbs up. Super reassuring, thanks, with a dramatic sigh worthy of an overworked sitcom. Dad, he stepped forward and placed the watch onto the platform. The glow immediately shifted from blue to a deep thrumming gold. Runes Jonas couldn't read spiraled up into the air, forming a lattice of symbols that rotated lazily. Touch the interface when ready, Sarah said. Jonas reached out, hesitated, then muttered, if I get vaporized, I hope at least someone writes a song about it. Then he tapped the nearest rune. There was a low vibrating hum like the purr of a starship's engine. The air grew thick, shimmering with unseen currents. Jonas felt a sharp prickling across his skin, as if tiny needles of light were dancing over him. For a moment he thought he might actually disintegrate, then wham, a pulse of energy knocked him flat on his back. He groaned, staring up at the stars. Well, that's one way to get a tan. Sars appeared over him, her face barely hiding a smile. She offered a hand, and Jonas took it, letting her haul him to his feet with surprising strength for someone who looked like she should be gracing the cover of Interstellar Vogue. Above the platform, a holographic sphere had formed, within it fragments of star charts, coded messages, and strange organic patterns swirled. Mel immediately began analyzing the data, their form flickering with excitement. This is not what we expected, Melon said. It is a navigational key, but not to any known location. Jonas brushed dust off his sleeves. Great, so the universe's most mysterious treasure map. Anything else? Melon hesitated, then highlighted a section of the swirling data. It showed a symbol, a spiraled sun surrounded by 4 moons, each with a different carved face. Jonas frowned, something about it tugged at a memory, but it was slippery, elusive. What is that? He asked. Sarah stuttered it intently. It's a mark of the ancients, a precursor race. Legends say they seated life across the galaxies before vanishing. Oh good, Jonah said. We are on a quest based on bedtime stories. What's next? Find the magical spoon of destiny. But Sars wasn't laughing. If the Syndic are after this, it's more than myth. They believe it leads to something powerful, something that could shift the balance between our worlds. Jonas rubbed his temples. I signed up for a snack bar and a paycheck, not Galaxith threatening secrets and ancient alien booby traps. Mel projected a path through the stars. The first coordinate lies within the ovarian shard field. Jonas's stomach dropped. He actually knew that name. It was on every pilot's no-fly list. A region of space littered with jagged crystalline debris, magnetic storms, and things that occasionally ate passing ships. Wonderful, he muttered. How come every great adventure starts with a bad idea in a worse location? Because easy paths lead to small victories, Sarah said, smiling faintly, and hard paths lead to funerals. Jonas replied, mostly mine. As they moved to prepare the ship, Jonas found himself assigned to a navigation enhancement pod, which was a fancy way of saying they strapped him into a floating chair surrounded by flashing lights and force fields. The Zila techs swarmed around, adjusting knobs, clicking tools, and arguing in their melodic, fast-paced language, one of them barely taller than Jonas's waist and covered in iridescent feathers handed him a helmet the size of a watermelon. I think you're confusing me with a particularly brave bowling ball, Jonah, said the text, squawked something in reply and jammed the helmet on his head. It immediately tightened, a soothing voice whispering, cognitive link established, do not think about sandwiches. Jonas immediately thought about sandwiches. The pod jolted, lifting into the air with a cheerful beep. Through the translucent dome, he could see Sars watching with folded arms, her expression an infuriating mix of amusement. And I told you so. I look ridiculous, Jonas called out. You look functional, she replied. Well, fashionably functional, I hope, he grumbled as the pod maneuvered toward the ship's bridge. When they finally reached the Asperian shard field, Jonas understood why sane people avoided it. The viewport filled with floating shards of ice and crystal the size of small moons, tumbling and colliding in slow, inevitable dances of destruction. Magnetic storms flared between them like ghostly auroras, and somewhere he swore he saw a shape moving, something too big, too wrong to be a ship. This is fine, Jonas said tightly. Totally fine, just another relaxing cruise through the galaxy's worst scrapyard. Sarah stood calm at the helm, fingers weaving through holographic controls. We must navigate manually. The shard field scrambles, auto-navigation. Jonas swallowed hard. Good thing I practiced piloting by playing Asteroid Dodger 7 when I was a kid. Melon's voice buzzed in his helmet. The mortality rate for traversing the shard field is 73%. Thanks, Melon, your bedside manner is as charming as ever. They plunged forward, the ship weaving through deadly debris with the grace of a dancer. Jonas did his best to assist from the pod, highlighting paths and anomalies, but mostly he just clung to the sides and tried not to scream when a particularly large shard came spinning toward them. Jonas involuntarily yelled, pull up, pull up. Sowers didn't even flinch. She angled the ship into a corkscrew dive, missing the shard by inches, the hull groaning in protest. Jonas let out a shaky laugh. On the bright side, if we die, at least the insurance paperwork will be hilarious. Focus, Jonas, Sarah said, but her voice was light, almost teasing. He had to, because beyond the spinning lethal chaos of the shard field something waited, something old, powerful, and tied to a past he didn't yet understand, and somehow, some way he was right at the center of it. The ship limped out of the Ovarian shard field like a half-drowned cat, plating scratched, engines groaning, and Jonas Creed clutching the arms of his navigation pod with white knuckles. He pried himself free and stumbled onto the deck, knees weak, hair static, frizzed in every direction. Sars Velquinov course looked utterly untouched by the madness. They just survived. Only the slight twitch of her long ears betrayed any sign of the tension that must have gripped her during that death-dying flight. Remind me, Jonah said, leaning against a wall that thankfully didn't breathe, to never ever let you talk me into piloting through an interstellar blender again. Sars offered a small, wise smile. You did well, Jonas barked a laugh. I'm pretty sure my spleen is in my left shoe. Melon floated into the bridge, shimmering and clicking quietly to themselves. Survival was within acceptable parameters. Probability recalculations will be updated. Previous odds of Jonas Creed's demise have been reduced by 0.3%. Jonas gave a mock bow. Be still, my ego. Outside the main viewport, the chaos of the shard field receded, replaced by an eerie calm. A system loomed ahead, a dwarf star wreathed in strange purple bands, surrounded by 3 broken planets. Hulking remains of once mighty worlds, now reduced to orbiting rubble. Among the debris spun something unnatural, a geometric construct impossibly large, casting shifting shadows across the starscape. It looked like a cathedral, but one designed by a mad architect with a fondness for impossible angles and materials that defied light itself. Spires twisted into infinity corridors coiled around nothing and doors hung suspended in void space. That's it, Sarah said, voice low. Jonas whistled, and here I was hoping for a cozy treasure chest guarded by a sleepy robot dog. Melon projected new data onto the bridge's display. Structure composition is unknown. Portions exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Recommend extreme caution. Jonas narrowed his eyes. Define extreme caution. Assume every surface may be lethal. Assume gravity is optional. Assume causality is negotiable. Perfect, Jonas said, rubbing his temples. It's like my last landlord, but with more existential dread. Sars touched the control and the ship began a slow approach. As they drew closer, Jonas noticed details, symbols etched into the surfaces, pulsing faintly in rhythms he could almost recognize. His heart thudded strangely, a deep resonant beat that had nothing to do with fear. The docking was a quiet, cautious affair. Tendrils of shimmering material unfurled from the construct connecting to the ship, with a surprisingly delicate touch forming a glowing bridge. Jonas eyed it skeptically. I'm guessing there's no safety rail. Sarah smiled faintly. Where's your sense of adventure on vacation? Preferably somewhere with fewer death spirals. Nevertheless, he followed her across the bridge. The surface felt solid, but beneath the translucent layer Jonas could see stars and voids stretching endlessly down. He focused very hard on not thinking about falling into oblivion. The entrance loomed ahead, a vast archway lined with symbols that rearranged themselves. When he looked away and then back, Jonas muttered, yep, totally normal. Not freaking out at all. They passed through the archway, and the sensation of movement changed. Gravity flickered uncertainly under their feet. The air grew heavier, thicker, filled with the faint hum of a language too ancient for ears to truly hear. Inside the structure was even more alien. Hallways twisted impossibly. A corridor might lead forward one moment and spiral downward the next. The walls were alive with shifting patterns, as if the entire place was thinking. Watching. Melon's voice came through their communicators. Environmental parameters, unstable spatial anomalies detected. Proceed with deliberate ignorance. Jonas blinked. Did you say ignorance? Correct. Attempting to understand this architecture may lead to cognitive degradation. Best to observe without interpretation. Oh, good, Jonas muttered. I've been practicing deliberate ignorance my whole life. This is my moment to shine. Sars moved with cautious confidence, her long ears flicking at unseen cues. Jonas stayed close, trying not to look too hard at doors that weren't there a moment ago, or stairs that led nowhere. Eventually they reached a chamber that felt different, less shifting. Madness, more grounded purpose. In the center floated a pedestal, and on it rested a crystalline sphere, pulsing with faint light. This is what we came for, Sarah said. Jonas approached carefully. The sphere hummed, resonating somewhere deep inside his bones. His fingers itched to touch it, but he remembered Melon's warnings and kept his hands to himself. Do we just grab it? He asked. Sars nodded quickly and respectfully, right, respectfully, like stealing cookies from a haunted cookie jar. He reached out, and just as his fingers brushed the sphere, the chamber shuddered. The walls rippled like disturbed water. A deep resonant tone rang through the air, and the sphere's light flared. Oh, Jonas said, cradling the now glowing sphere in his arms, I think I woke it up. Melon's voice crackled through static. Entities manifesting suggest immediate retreat. Jonas spun, and sure enough, forms were emerging from the walls. They were tall, humanoid, but their bodies were stitched from darkness and refracted light, their eyes voids that drank in the stars. Diplomacy? Jonas asked, backing toward the exit. Sars pulled a sleek energy blade from her belt. Diplomacy's second cousin. Running, they sprinted through the shifting corridors, pursued by the entities. Doors slammed shut behind them, walls reconfigured mid-stride, and gravity played cruel tricks, flipping them upside down and sideways. At one point Jonas found himself running along a wall, while Sars calmly vaulted over a gravity chasm, her long ears trailing behind her like banners. Jonas muttered, yeah, sure. Let's make it look easy, why not? They barreled back across the bridge, alarms Blaring across their ship, Melon activated the docking disengagement the moment they leapt aboard and the shimmering tendrils snapped free. The ship lurched into motion just as the first of the entities reached the threshold. The construct began to collapse behind them, folding into itself like a dying star. Jonas, panting heavily, still clutching the sphere, managed a breathless laugh. Well, he wheezed, I guess they really didn't want us borrowing their paper weight. Sars dropped into the co-pilot seat, her own breath fast but controlled. She glanced at him, a glint of humor in her eye. This was only the first step, she said. Jonas groaned. Please tell me the next step involves a spa day and several strong drinks. Melon's voice, entirely unhelpful, chimed in. Next coordinates uploading, danger likelihood significant. Jonas flopped back into his seat, the sphere warm against his chest, and muttered, of course it is. Why would it be anything else? Jonas wasn't sure if the crystalline sphere was humming or if his nerves had just developed their own internal soundtrack, but either way the thing hadn't stopped pulsing since he picked it up. It was warm against his chest, emitting a glow that flickered in rhythm with something he couldn't name. Maybe the ship's systems, maybe his heartbeat, or maybe the dying breath of a hyper-intelligent alien toaster. For all he knew, the important part was it hadn't exploded yet. He sat on the floor of his quarters, legs crossed, the sphere resting in his lap like an unusually cryptic cat. He poked it didn't react. He poked it again, harder this time, and it gave a very offended buzz. Okay, Jonas muttered. No poking, you got it. Consent is key. The door slid open with a soft hiss and Sarah stepped inside, hands behind her back, posture rigid as always. Her long ears twitched slightly as she took in the scene. Jonas still in yesterday's shirt, hair a solar flare of disarray, talking to a glowing ball. You've bonded with it, she observed, her voice unreadable. I've annoyed it into grudging tolerance, Jonas replied. It's like every roommate I've ever had. Sarah knelt beside him, her presence calm, grounding. We've analyzed the initial data. The sphere contains a layered encryption, organic not digital. It interfaces through BOF feedback. Jonas blinked. So you're saying it likes me? Possibly, or it's using you. The line is often thin. Well, I have a long history of being used by glowing things, credit cards, mostly. She smiled faintly, and extended a small device, a thin strip of metal with nodes at each end. This will monitor your neural activity. We are going to attempt synchronized interface. Is this the part where my brain gets scrambled like an omelette? We've reduced the risk of permanent damage to under 15%. Great, that's almost reassuring. He strapped the device to his temple, took a deep breath, and touched the sphere again. The room dimmed, the air changed, not in temperature, not in smell, but in texture. Like space itself had gone denser, more saturated. His vision blurred, then cleared, and he was somewhere else. Not physically, he could still feel the floor under him, the slight ache in his knees, the irritating itch on his left shoulder that had nothing to do with metaphysical travel, but his mind was adrift in an impossible space, a vast infinite chamber of shifting glass and fire where time stretched like taffy and every sound echoed backward before it was made. He floated in a sea of memory, not his own, but familiar alien thoughts brushed against him. Old and mournful, he glimpsed flashes, a man who looked like him, only younger, arguing with a tall figure, an armor, a planet with green oceans and a sky full of rings. Laughter in a language that didn't need translation. He saw a child, long ears, familiar eyes, Sarah's. Jonas gasped and yanked himself back. The sphere dimmed, the hum subsided, and he was once again on the floor of his quarters, sweating and breathless. Sars was staring at him, her expression frozen somewhere between curiosity and something far more complicated. You saw him, she said. Jonas nodded, still catching his breath. Your father, and you that was you, wasn't it? The girl with the shiny rock collection and the disturbingly large battlemech. Her voice was quiet. Yes, that was before the war, before he disappeared. He knew me, Jonas murmured, or the younger version of me. He spoke of me constantly, she said. He said you were reckless, stubborn, and impossible to keep out of trouble. He also said you once beat him at cosmic chess using only salt shakers and a blindfold. I've never played chess in my life, neither had he, she added. They sat In silence for a moment the glow of the sphere casting faint constellations across the ceiling finally Jonas broke the quiet. So what now? We follow this breadcrumb trail of ancient memory. Spheres until we find the galactic equivalent of Excalibur, or the recipe for immortality, or a very fancy light switch. Sarah stood, her expression settling back into commander mode. The sphere has revealed coordinates: a moon in the Phaser Adrift abandoned research station. My father spent years there before the final campaign. Abandoned research station, Jonas repeated. Why does every part of this journey sound like the beginning of a horror holo film? Melon's voice chirped in from the intercom. Preliminary scans confirm dangerous radiation pockets, gravitational inconsistencies, and several signatures that suggest long-term decay of psionic insulation. None in haunted, Jonas added. Very likely, Melon agreed. By the time they reached the Vasari drift, Jonas had decided that space was 90% empty and 10% weird, and this place was all weird. The moon wasn't just barren, it looked like someone had taken a bite out of it. Craters glowed faintly, as though remembering fires long gone. Their ship circled the surface cautiously, scanning for a safe place to land there. Sarah said, pointing to a jagged rise of rock, the entrance to the station. They landed with a jolt, the landing struts groaning like elderly knees. Jonas donned a suit, sleek, lightweight, with a helmet that made him look like a fashion-forward bug. Sowers was already suited and armed, her blade clipped to her back, her rifle magnetically locked to her hip. Mel opted to remain on the ship, citing a personal aversion to decomposing quantum facilities. The station's entrance was half buried, but still powered. They slipped inside, lights flickering on as if waking from a long nap. Dust floated through the air in lazy spirals, and distant hums echoed from unseen machinery. Cuzzy, Jonas whispered in that cursed crypt kind of way. They passed through corridors lined with cracked screens, blinking status lights, and ancient posters, some still legible, others half-eaten by time. One read, "Do not feed the algorithms. Words to live by." Jonas muttered. In the central chamber, they found a console built into a strange organic frame. It pulsed when Sowers approached, recognizing her.